2020.
Yeah.
Nigerian music.
Yeah.
Coronavirus.
Yes.
Albums.
Yes.
Little hits according to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what's your view of the year, Nigerian music in 2020?
Well,
first of all, let's talk about coronavirus, which came as early as February, March. Then lockdown came in March. How did that impact the industry?
The coronavirus at the start of the industry, at the start of March was when lockdown measures were instituted by a lot of countries. And in Nigeria as a whole, we saw a lot of people had doubts when those things started happening, because a person like Davido, for example, was on tour, a Live Nation tour. Davido was a global tour. Now he had to stop that tour and he had to come back to Lagos and do things. Artists were restless. For the first time in a while, their major source of income, which is live performances and shows and a lot of other things, sort of took a massive hit. Like a lot of artists didn't perform for 4 or 5 months. Now, some of them might have been getting shows, probably, but it was still not at the usual rate, with the intensity that their shows would usually come on a good day. So it was a problem for a lot of them. But in the middle of that, I think the lockdown was actually good for the Nigerian music industry. COVID has been good on the Nigerian music industry. Now, it has taken a lot of things from the Nigerian music industry, but largely, it has done way more for the Nigerian music industry than anybody expected, than anybody anticipated we will gain from the coronavirus. Number one, we are still a download market, right? Largely, we're a download market. The streaming platforms that have the highest number of subscribers in the country, like regular subscribers, they are around 150,000, maybe even less. But the problem is, but the good thing is, even if those ones they have 150,000 subscribers, right? The problem is some of the subscribers on, say, an Apple Music might not necessarily be residents in Nigeria. They are Nigerian, but they might not necessarily be residents in Nigeria. But here is the thing about how that the COVID affected streaming. At the start of the lockdown, when a lot of companies announced their Q1 results, there was a nosedive at the start of the lockdown, because people were trying to understand how to adjust to it, how to live their lives, how to move forward, and how to cope with the problems of lack of mobility. But by the middle of the lockdown, when a lot of companies then announced their Q2 results, you saw a spike. Monthly active users, everything kept going up. In Nigeria, for example, an Apple Music, for example, whose numbers were maybe around 100,000 before, now it's way higher than it could be, and the rate of the increase is more than the increase from last year, and that's thanks to the lockdown. During the lockdown, a lot of Nigerians realized that a lot of Nigerians didn't even know that you could have Apple Music on your Android phone, but now they do. Boomplay recorded an increase. Audiomack from the challenger brand in Nigerian music industry, it's become a mainstay these days. Because why? They offer Nigerians a freemium package, and they pay artists via ads. Like, if you are using the freemium platform, you are going to get ads in the middle of your listening experience. Now, it's not going to be like Deezer, where the ads they are getting straight into your ears. You might not be able to operate some of the things on your phone, maybe on the music player directly, on the music phone, so you have to cancel some of the ads, but you're going to see those ads. And in a way, it can be discomforting. But at the same time, you are getting music in premium, you are getting quality music. Not legally now, you are getting legally. And artists are making money on the back end. It's not a lot of money, but they are making the money. A lot of artists stop releasing their music on SoundCloud. Even if they release their music on SoundCloud, they're going to push it to Audiomack. And people, a lot of Nigerian artists were not even including SoundCloud in their links anymore, in their release links. It's only Audiomack that you see there. So it was a gradual thing that Nigerians got used to, and it became good news for the Nigerian music industry. Now look at it this way: during the lockdown, the maturation of Nigerian music industry went from like 30 to like a 50. Because before the lockdown, a lot of the platforms that could be beneficial to the Nigerian music industry in the long term, like small brands, small news agencies, small platforms, small communities, small ideas, they took on larger responsibilities during the lockdown. Look at the Turntable Chat. Turntable Chat now, before the lockdown, they weren't even that, people didn't know them. But as of 3 months ago, Davido is relying on them and is posting them on his social media pages. And the fact that the practitioners in the Nigerian music industry during the lockdown became more visible, people knew them. And then the fact that during the lockdown, due to the lockdown, in a lot of ways, Nigerian artists were sitting at home, they were doing nothing. And a lot of them had the time to create bodies of work. Look at Davido. Davido, for the first time, Davido said the reason why he wanted to make that album was because he couldn't make a better time with his producers and the songwriters in one place. But for a better time, he was going nowhere. He was in Nigeria. So he recorded that album by himself in his house. So and then the consumption patterns of Nigerians became more improved. We talked about streaming the other time. This year alone, we have seen Nigerian artists, Nigerian superstars, Burna Boy, Wizkid, Davido, gain 1 million organic streams on YouTube main of Nigeria alone. It shows that the listening habits of Nigerian artists switched aggressively during the lockdown. People were going on streaming platforms. And it's not just music alone now. You have to look at the entertainment sphere as a whole. Companies like Showmax and Netflix, people are gravitating towards them aggressively too. For example, in Q2 2020, Netflix recorded their highest level of their highest number of subscribers ever in a quarter. It was mind-blowing. Now, they didn't record revenue on it, but at the same time, it was something for them because that's a lot of registered users and even subscribers. So it was a beautiful time for Nigeria. And then during the lockdown, we went back to being an album market. We were a singles market for a long time. But now you can't deny the fact that we are back to being a body of work market. In 2020 alone, Nigeria saw a ridiculous amount of bodies of work. And guess what? A lot of them were quality. And that's down to Nigerian artists. Shout out to Nigerian artists, by the way. It's been a topsy-turvy year. Now, income took a hit for the average Nigerian artist, except maybe the superstars. Income took a huge hit for them. But at the same time, going forward, it bodes well for Nigerian music industry. The widening avenues to make money. The avenues to make money for Nigerian artists are getting wider. Like before, they were more streamlined. But these days, you are looking at live streaming. You are looking at a lot of other opportunities for them to make money from.
How feasible is the streaming in Nigeria, in Nigerian music industry? It's not enough money. It's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
But how going forward?
The live streaming thing is... Live streaming has been an idea for a long time. People have been mooting it for a long time. They have been canvassing it for a long time as an alternative to the more experiential, more profitable, and more enjoyable experience of the live of live events and live performances. But live streaming or virtual performances became an idea because COVID-19 forced everybody. We talked about it the other time. COVID-19 forced everybody to find alternatives to performances and revenue generation from performances, because you can't go to a venue you can't go to even open air venues because the world didn't understand COVID at the time. So we couldn't exactly put people at risk. 10,000, 50,000 people in venues where COVID could easily be transmitted. And look at it this way, event centers across the world were closed. In Q2 2020, Rolling Stone did a special feature on event centers in the US, and lots of them, they're having to lease some of their properties out because they need, like, a lot of them have mortgages to pay and revenue was not coming in. Some of them had even paid for certain events to be held in those venues. Now look at them, those events can't hold anymore. They're having to refund people. They're having, and no other, there are other revenues of income generation. They are all short. Now look at it. Live streaming was an opportunity for everybody to make money. Okay, you are not going to have an audience like that, but you are going to have a band. And your thoughts might even be more gathered. It might be more streamlined. You might not have the energy. You might not require the same amount of energy to perform, but you can still reach your fans and you can still make money off this thing. But here's the problem with that. The problem with that is that it's not as experiential as real life performances. It's not as experiential. It's not as profitable. The world doesn't understand it yet. And it's not as enjoyable even. The entire idea of live performances was to get an alternative to the music that you were listening to. Yeah. So the problem with live streaming is that it might be different. It's Wasabi's performance for the Mobile Awards was different. It was a virtual performance. It was different. It was fun. It was different. The version of Koroba was amazing. But a lot of people still, the problem with live performances is that it's not different from what I'm watching on Colors TV. So, and that means it's not as experiential. And people are not going to exactly put their money on sponsorship and a lot of things into things that they don't understand. For example, you know that if you host a show at Landmark Event Center, people are going to get there, you're going to get eyeballs on your property. A lot of people that are going to have stands and stalls at those places know that people are going to come. That's another avenue of income generation for people who are throwing the events and for the event center owners. But for live streaming, who is putting money into where? There's no faith yet. So the economics of it and the financial aspect of it is not balanced there. A Live Nation, for example, lost 7 billion this year. If they had found live streaming alternatives for those shows that they lost money on, they are not going to make the 7 billion back. They might not even make it up to $500 million. Even if they make up to 100 million. Okay. So it's a problem. But then a lot of people are making strides towards making breakthroughs in the instance of live streaming. They are looking at Twitch. They are looking at Facebook. We are going to have to see what happens in 2021. But it's going to be interesting, definitely, going forward.
Yeah, talking about Twitch, Facebook. Yeah. We also saw short form video apps. Yeah. Music. TikTok, Check Up Daddy, how it did. Yeah. What's the play? What's the future like?
I mean, the play for short form video formats is enjoy music. Not exactly enjoy music. Okay, Nigeria music industry. I was even trying to look at the holistic aspect of it. The fact is, it's a play for another type of social media experience. So TikTok and Thriller, for example, the people who were the forerunners at the start, they were majorly playing for a Gen Z audience. Now, MRC released the data. They released data about 5 months ago. And the data specifically reveals that over 54% of people who are on Thriller and TikTok were Gen Z. So it shows you that you, for example, you're a millennial. You might have a Thriller account, but you're not going to be creating like a Gen Z person is going to be creating because you are not in school, because you don't have time. And even if you're in school, even if you have time, you probably use it for something else. Maybe a course or another whatever else that you want to do that you think is profitable. The most followed people on TikTok and all these platforms are Gen Z. Charlie D'Amelio is 19 or 17. She's under 18. She's not even 18 yet. And you have to look at the way and manner for example, the choreographies, the fun things, the challenges, the challenge culture that they brought back and they built on. You might want to do them. Maybe you might do them once in 3 months. But Gen Z, they will have time to do those things. Way more than you do. So the idea was to make sure that these people were in tune. But then all of a sudden, it brought in, because it's a video format and video is the future of content. It's already in the present, it's already powerful in the present. But in certain markets, videos have not exactly caught up to the realities of, say, written content and maybe even audio content. But video these days, especially internet-based video content, is the future of everything because it's easily accessible and it's more entertaining and doesn't require the same amount of brain work that you require to read an article. So the idea is these guys have been, then a lot of companies and a lot of people found ways to use it to promote music. So the first set of songs that blew off TikTok were Old Town Road, were The Box, Arizona Zevas, Roxanne, a lot of those other songs. But then it's built into this really big idea of music promotion as a tool But in Nigeria, the problem is, then a lot of them then got popular at the start of the lockdown because people were at home, they were bored, they couldn't do anything. They needed something to pour their energy into. So what did they do? They started creating on TikTok and Thriller. It was an amazing idea. Now, but the problem is the usage wasn't exactly still as powerful in Nigeria. For example, what's the social media with the highest level of registered users in Nigeria? Facebook. It's about 28 million users on Facebook. Now, Stats Counter says about 17% of Nigerians are on Twitter. Maybe that's too high because that's 28 million Nigerians on Facebook alone. So we are going to be looking at less than 20 million on Twitter. That means Instagram is slightly around those figures too. That means TikTok and Thriller are much lower because they are not penetrated and they require a ridiculous amount of money for people. The amount of data that TikTok and Thriller consume is crazy. In a country where people cannot afford to eat, that means the mainstream cannot afford to buy the data that TikTok and Thriller use. That means it's not penetrating yet. Those songs blew up on those platforms. But the question now is, are those platforms actually powerful enough to push Nigerian music? The conversation then becomes maybe yes, but it's not exactly a total yes. A lot of those videos were created on those platforms, but they blew up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So that means they still have power, regardless of how you want to look at it. Another problem that they face is that internet penetration in Nigeria, in Africa, it's on the increase. It's about 33% now, but it's still some way of the global benchmark of about 62%. So we need to find a way to move forward. It's a good thing. It looks good.
So the income has been stifled by the lack of performances and touring.
Yeah.
How do you think it's going to affect Nigerian artists? Like, how do you think they can make up?
I think Nigerian artists need to start looking at local touring. Like some people have started hosting shows in certain parts across the world. But Nigeria, for a long time, people have been doing a lot of things. Now, restaurants just opened up and clubs have been open. So that means people can be performing in clubs if they wanted to perform in clubs. So we need to be able, we don't have an infrastructure for local touring. I was having a conversation with the cavemen some months ago. And I told them that, guys, you guys are primed to be attractive for a local touring audience. And they were like, we're looking into it. But the problem is security, bad roads. How are you going to do it? So the thing is, whoever is able to pull it off, you remember Leggings and Friends and how popular it was. Like, people need to start looking at local touring. Like, it's not a problem if you might not have, you might have problems, you might encounter problems, but you need to still be able to try to understand how it works and even attempt working on it. Because looking at it, this money that comes off streaming has increased for a lot of artists, but it's still some way of the global benchmark. Because look, on YouTube, for example, over 60% of streams, Nigerian streams on YouTube are not even from Nigeria, they're from US, UK, and France. And YouTube Main is the largest streaming platform in Nigeria.
So the streaming now, everything that we're streaming from the Nigerian perspective, does it reflect what we consume?
We have to look at you remember Spotify Wrapped and some of Spotify is also in Nigeria, so we might not necessarily be able to rely on the data. But Apple Music is in Nigeria, YouTube Music is in Nigeria, Audiomack is in Nigeria, Boomplay is in Nigeria. And you have to look at their top 100 Nigerian songs of the year. They might not exactly be accurate. Like the top 20, for example, when you look at the rate at which a lot of people listen to certain songs, they might not exactly reflect the things that how we've consumed music over time. But it's getting way better. It's getting really better. Like, it's starting to reflect more of the things we consume in more accurate fashion. But for example, Way Too Big by Burna Boy is still in the top 20 of Apple Music's most streamed of top Nigerian songs on Apple Music. Way Too Big is not one of the top 20. It's not one of the top 20 Nigerian songs of the year. It's huge because it's Burna Boy. But when you're looking at the biggest Nigerian songs of 2020, are we going to put Way Too Big in there? No. Like 5% of Nigeria still streams. Like Nigeria still has about 8.2 million unique visitors. Nigeria is still largely a download market. About 70-something million Nigerians still stream, they still download music. So not exactly. But then it's getting better.
So in 2020, we saw a lot of labor services dishing out a lot of bags for Nigerians.
Yeah,
we did. For the next year, for the coming year, how do you gauge the record label and the labor services dynamics?
I mean, it's It's an interesting dynamic because when you look at it, it showcases the powers. We wrote an article earlier in the year about record labels versus distribution companies versus label services versus a lot of these people say. It was an article that showed that these days, the traditional means of music distribution has been abridged. Before, it was very traditional, like from the record labels to the manufacturing people to the trucks that take them to the one that make the CDs, to the trucks that take them to the supermarkets, to the supermarkets that people buy, and then to the people that buy the music. But these days, everything is mostly digital because physical copies are taking a hit anyway. So what are people doing? There is the streaming platforms. In place of the supermarkets, there's streaming platforms. In place of the trucks, there's distribution companies. In place of the manufacturing people, there is the labels and label services companies who are on the back end. So the truth about this conversation is it's a new reality that shows that the future of music in the next 100 years, we might see a different music industry entirely. Now, label service in Nigeria, for example, we never really had a coded record label system. The Nigerian record labels were mostly like investors who were never even making their sound returns on investments. Some of them were, but a lot of them were not, because the structures in Nigerian music does not aid the cause of the Nigerian record labels. But what these label services have succeeded in doing, and what are these label services distribution publishing companies? You're looking at 1RPM, looking at Platoon, you're looking at Empire, Zeki Media, you're looking at Ijoya, Empower, and a lot of these other companies out there. So what they do basically is, in place of the advance that you get from record labels, they give you certain money upfront. And then you make a body of work, and then they get it and license it for a few years, and then you get it back. So the idea is they invest in it and you own your project at the end of the day. So the difference is, instead of record labels that own your masters, there's a chance that you own your masters back at the end of a particular number of years, and then you still get the money. And the good thing about those guys is they are so amazing in the sense that they also offer the artists cogent PR plans. For example, a Platoon, for example, they have a billboard on the island behind law school. World has been there, Simi has been there, a lot of the artists have been there. Empire, for example, is getting really, really powerful. Platoon is owned by Apple Music. So the idea is the power dynamics in the music industry is changing and evolving. But then a lot of people then make the mistake to think that, oh, it means that the end for record labels. That's the big record labels. Now, how does the big record labels play into this conversation? The big record labels now they are back in Nigeria. The three of them are back in Nigeria. Sony, Warner, and Universal Music. They are back in Nigeria. They left in the 90s, but they are back now. Look at, a lot of people seem to think that, oh, because Platoon is having more power. Bro, Apple Music is owned by Platoon. And Apple Music is not going to cross a huge record label because it owns Platoon. Because a lot of the catalog that you still have on Apple Music is owned by the major record labels. So, like Steve Stout was telling Music Business Worldwide some weeks ago, about 5 months ago, it's impossible to say that record labels don't have power anymore. They still own the power. The power is actually too much. And most of the streaming platforms are pandering to them because they own the catalog. And before the streaming platforms can have power to actually be able to own and control, like the record labels are controlled, they're going to need another 50 to 100 years. Or they're going to have to buy more catalogs from a lot of companies.
Okay. Talking about Nigerian artists now,
yeah.
Who are the perfect examples of labels having power and working out well in the artist's interest?
You have to look at a lot of them actually. I mean, a lot of Nigerian artists are signed to foreign record labels these days. Some of them are not even announcing it yet, but they are signed to record labels. Techno that just released an album, he signed to Universal Music. Davido is signed to Sony. Wizkid is signed to RCA via Sony via RCA. Burna Boy is signed to Atlantic. Tiwa Savage is signed to Motown and UMG. But out of all of them, you have to look at Burna Boy. He's the one enjoying a lot of the things, a lot of the coverage, a lot of the push, a lot of the placements, a lot of the influences for him and everything. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily think it's about the Nigerian artists. Like these labels are interested in how to expand their market. It's not about the Nigerian artists. They're interested in how to make more money. So it's a dynamic. Okay, we are taking your artists from here to other parts of the world. So how then do we bring those artists that are there into this place with strategic features? So that's the idea. It's a dynamic, it's a power dynamic thing. And that was why I was saying that the streaming platforms are not going to irk the record labels because there's too much power. Too much power. And look at it this way, record labels are never going out of style. What they just have to do is they will become something else entirely. Look, these days, UMG and Sony have shares in Spotify. Before you know it, one of them will buy some of these label services companies. That's if they don't have shares in some of these in some of these label services company already. So what they are going to do, some of them, they have shares in TikTok, they have shares in Trailer. Universal and Warner have shares in Trailer. Or Sony and Warner have shares in Trailer. So it's the idea that you have to think of the things that you're doing and how you are going to be able to do them. You can't just write things off because you want to write them off.
Okay. Yeah. So in general now, how was Afrobeat growing in 2020?
Well, Afrobeat is on the rise. Afrobeat is on a serious rise. And these days, before a lot of people, when they think of Afrobeat, they think of Nigeria. But this year, we have seen South Africa get firmly into the race over the past 1 year to 18 months. For example, Shoma Josie and John Cena was really huge at some point. And you have to look at Jerusalem, which was a smash, global smash this year. Jerusalem was the most Shazammed song in the world at some point this year. That's power. I mean, we are not necessarily having the Billboard 100 top 40 hits yet, but we are placing on UK top 40. We are doing well across the world, and it looks good. It bodes well. Like, but then right now, I just think Afrobeat artists across the world, and even the supporters, the infrastructure of Afrobeats, we need to work more than we talk. It's not about talking. It's not about saying it into action. We need to work and we need to understand our power. The power is only going to come to us when we fight for it and we build for it. It's not going to come because we're talking about it. That's it.
Is it on course to transcend into the realms that we want it to, Afrobeats?
Well, it's very hard to say at this time. But you have to look at how a Burna Boy's album, African Giant, his second album on Atlantic, debuted outside the top 100 of Billboard 200. This year, it's top 60, number 54. It peaked at number 54. So it shows that there is a journey. It might not just be like Wizkid told an interviewer about on Independence Day. He said on Arise TV, I think it was Arise TV. He said they are just scratching the surface. He knows that they are just scratching the surface. The next generation say it's probably going to be them Fireboy and Rema and a lot of these boys are going to reap the benefits of the work that Wizkid, Burna, Tiwa Savage, and some of these guys have done already. And that's facts for me.